Hi, greetings from QGenesis. Hope everybody is keeping well and safe out there. Well, I'm Sophie here, heading the delivery. At the outset, I would like to thank everybody for joining us. We believe learning is continuous and hence we are here. Before we could proceed with the session, I would like to give a brief about the organization. Here you go about QGenesis. It's a global consulting firm with more than 20 years of footprint in various domains such as IT, telecom, industrial automation, oil and gas, marine, subsea, FMCG, manufacturing, etc. We connect corporate audits in terms of clients' quality, safety, sustainability, security, health, and reputational risk. We also build incredible connections through learning and training. Last but not the least, we provide consultation on process improvements as well. That's for now about the organization. I would like to inform participants that the Q&A session is open since the start of the session. Whomsoever has any queries, please post your queries through the chat window. Let me introduce our life coach and trainer, Ms. Durga. Durga has over 27 years of excellence and experience in transforming lives. Her expertise and passion in neuroscience of leadership, mindfulness, cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, Ikigai, EQ, art as therapy, various dimensions of communication skills makes a difference to the world around her. She engages learners in life-changing sessions through experiential learning and practical takeaways. She trains pan-India with a natural flair in English, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, as well as in Mauritius. She is a curriculum consultant for institutes in Singapore, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Durga has facilitated more than 4,000 varied teams and 50,000 trainees over the years, currently transforming lives through webinars and online sessions. Well, let's enjoy a knowledge-packed training session. Here you go, Ms. Durga. On behalf of QGenesis, I welcome you. Over to you, Durga.
Thank you. Please do confirm if the screen is visible to all.
Yes.
Great. Thanks for that. Yes, as you're all aware, we are having this session to talk about conversational intelligence. So let us discuss what is conversational intelligence. I'm not sure if you're already aware of this or you know about it and you're here today to learn more about it. So I'm not too sure about it. I guess you can share your inputs. If you had to define conversational intelligence, what would it be? You could share if you've heard about it or read about it. Please do share that in our Q&A section. So we are looking at conversational intelligence because this is something very close to my heart, and I feel it has had a huge impact on self as well as the people around me. And whoever I've trained, I've found has transformed their journey in terms of conversations, in terms of how it impacted their results and the positivity that came through co-creation of transformations. So this is exactly why today we are here on this session to see how we can co-create our conversations in such a way that we arrive at the impact we are looking for, at the objectives we are looking for. So if I were to ask you a question, the conversations you hold in a day, it is assumed 70% of our time, research does prove that 70% of our time we are involved in communication. And out of that 70%, 30% is through speech. So we are actively involved or participating in conversations, dialogues, interactions with the people around us. We are aware we are social creatures, we are social human beings, we love interactions, we love to communicate, we want to ask favors, do favors, share information, request information. So there's multiple reasons why we communicate. So today we are here to check on what is the neuroscience of conversational intelligence. So first let's understand how the brain impacts our conversations, how it affects the thought processes, how it affects our mood swings, our emotions, and how we can negotiate with the brain to probably co-create our conversations with the person we are communicating with. So there is a conversational dashboard which has been developed by Judith Glaser. She's written the book Conversational Intelligence based on research for over many years. So we're going to take a look at the conversational dashboard. There are 3 levels to conversation in this. So what are the 3 levels and how we can move from one level to the next level is something we will try to understand. And to take this forward or wrap it up, we'll have the communication intelligence tools, the tools which we can use, the LAPS technique or the trust technique, and what way can we use these tools to transform our conversations. That is what we're looking at. So how do you benefit? You have shared your time, your valuable time, and yes, I think quite often most people are going through online fatigue, too much of overload of information, I guess, and sessions are happening all around. So why invest your time in this? Definitely this is going to make a difference to you, because one, it's going to bring about a positive change in you as well as your interactions, which impacts your life definitely. It nurtures a culturing or environment where you can cultivate productivity, and we're looking at how you can build trust, build relationships, relationships that last. That's something very important for you. And we had already mentioned how to transform your conversations. So I did probably ask, would you be able to define conversational intelligence? If you can, please do share it. Our moderator would take care of that and probably share it with me eventually. So if you are aware of this, what is conversational intelligence, please feel free to share. So as you can see, there is this book which has been recently published, and we are looking at how this intelligence has taken over the world and how it has impacted professional conversations as well as business conversations and personal conversations, how it has impacted. So conversational intelligence begins with building trust. So quite often we notice that when there is lack of trust, the relationship has no foundation to be built on, right? So trust is the foundation for any relationship, and this trust can be enhanced by using the tools we are looking at. So how do we enhance this process of building trust? How do we enhance this process of creating transformational conversations is what we are looking at. So this creates a level of trust which you create with others and ends with the quality of interactions. Now, if we look at the quality of interactions you hold, quite often, as I already mentioned, you have interactions throughout the day, and most of our life, 70% of our life, we are immersed in conversations. Now, looking back, try and see how many of these conversations have been successful. Just try and introspect and check how many of your conversations which you hold are successful. When I say successful, what do I mean by that? Successful here, I mean by when we have conversations, we quite often talk past the other person. We sort of overwhelm them, or we negate their feelings, we sidestep their thoughts, we talk past, or we talk over them, like, we go beyond what they were looking for in our conversations. So we talk past, we talk over, and most important, we end up triggering emotions, triggering anger. We probably something which we utter triggers a kind of reaction which we didn't expect. So what went wrong? Why was the trigger there? So looking at why did we trigger? How did this trigger happen? That's something we could look at as we proceed further with this conversational intelligence. So we looked at how we can connect with people. So what is this intelligence all about? We have learned about intelligent quotient. Then we said, okay, intelligent quotient is not sufficient to take you forward in life. You need EQ. Then came the emotional quotient by Daniel Goleman. So we talked about EQ. Then came SQ, the success quotient or style quotient, spiritual quotient. So the multiple interpretations to SQ. And now with the pandemic, we are talking about AQ. So with all the quotients around us, we have now an additional one, which is the conversational intelligence quotient. So what is it all about? So this is to understand, one, as you can see, it begins with elevating the level of trust. Two, it ends with the quality of the interaction. So where research has proved that out of 10 conversations, 9 conversations miss their mark. So we do not achieve what we started off in our conversation. So probably it ended up in a fight, or ended up in a conflict, or we triggered an emotion which we didn't expect, or the person just slammed the door and walked out, which was not what you expected out of this conversation. So quite often we end up triggering than getting the result which we look for. So which means 9 out of 10 conversations miss their mark. So this is what exactly this fact is what triggered this research. So what happens, what goes wrong, why do we miss our mark, why do we miss our objectives? So that research is what has come up with this conversational intelligence. So now, adding to our list of cues, we have now the CIQ, the conversational intelligence quotient. So it's all about understanding that words can change the world around us. Words can create scenarios. Words can nurture worlds around us. So what is the impact of words, or the power of words we are talking about, right? The words we choose can be swords for a fight, or it can be a gift for a celebration. So they can be gifts, or they can be swords which trigger a fight. So it is basically we are trying to understand how words have an impact on the brain of the person who's listening to you. So the choice of words you use, the words you use, or the words you say, or the way you say it, the way you utter, your tone, all this, the pitch, most important, the pitch, all this has an impact on the brain of the listener. So we do know the experiment of the tappers and listeners, right? We have probably read about it or experienced the gap in the communication. The tapper assumes the listener understands, and the listener does not really ask a question, so he takes it for granted, yes, I do understand, and later there is a gap. So to bridge this gap, we do understand that it's very important to ask questions, the gap between tappers and listeners. So here we're looking at what exactly happens when you use these words, how it triggers emotions, how it sidesteps thoughts, and how it probably connects with the other person. So we're looking at various aspects when we talk about conversational intelligence. How do we connect with the person? How do we engage the person? How do we grow with the person? And most important, how do we evolve with the person with whom we are interacting? So these are the various parameters we're looking at through this conversational intelligence. So the bottom line would be that we must understand the brain is impacted by the choice of words we use. When I say brain is impacted, the brain of the listener is impacted by the choice of words we use, by the tone we use, by the pitch we use, probably the volume as well. So all this has an impact, and that impact is what makes us either hit the mark, make it successful, or lose the mark. So let us see how we can tap on this knowledge to ensure that we can manipulate the conversation to building trust and take it to a higher level where cognitive skills are at its peak. So that is the impact we are trying to achieve through this. To achieve that, and before we move on to the dashboard, there's something which you need to understand. So this would be the foundation of this entire quotient, which we are looking at, the conversational intelligence quotient. You need to understand the neuroscience of the brain, so how the brain functions and what are the various brains we are blessed with. So that's something you need to understand. I hope you're all fine with that, because there's a little bit of a science in that, and I trust you are not a science hater in this forum. But I find it very interesting, so I'm sure you would too, because as I already mentioned, it transforms your life, the knowledge what you're going to gain right now. So that's great. So looking at 6 brains, as you can see in this illustration, there are these brains which are labeled. So let me start with this, the neocortex. So what are the 6 brains we're looking at? We have a picture of the complete brain, the whole brain. I'm talking about the neocortex. Then we have the primitive brain here, and that's the heart brain, the gut brain, limbic brain, and the prefrontal cortex. So we do have our 6 brains out here. So that is what makes composes the whole brain. I'm not getting into the details of the other labeled parts. So we're just looking at the functionalities of the 6 brains and how they impact our conversations and how we can achieve what we want to achieve. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. So what is the value of understanding this? Why are we learning this? So the 6 brains. Why not just say, hey, why don't you just say this? Or why don't you just be positive? It's not about me, talk about we, and don't use I and say you. And we have a lot of things like use this and do not use this. So why not just move on to the conversation, move on to the words? We are looking at the brains for a simple reason. They secrete hormones, and these hormones impact our functionality of the brain, the functionality of the digestive system, the health of your body, the mood swings. It impacts a lot of things in your body, and we need to understand that to see how it impacts our conversations as well. So that's exactly why we are looking at the brain right now. So let me take you forward to begin with the heart brain. I trust at this moment my rate of speech is fine with all of you. I hope I'm not too fast. Do give me a signal if you want me to slow down or if there's any question you need to clarify. So please do share right away. Don't worry about interrupting. So to begin with, here we are at the heart brain. As you can see, the heart, there is a symbolic representation out of there. So we have the heart and we have the brain. So it is all about how we can sync with the other person. So we're very familiar with Wi-Fi, right? We all know what's Wi-Fi and how it syncs with our devices, our electronic devices. We are very familiar with that. So this brain is the basic in the entire system of our nervous system. It is the basic wired brain which we can look at, and it syncs just like the Wi-Fi. So what happens here? Uh, we did talk about how Judith Glaser wrote this book on conversational intelligence, and we have this entire dashboard which you can look at. So much earlier, this is a more recent output from her research, but much earlier in the 1960s, we had people like Albert Mehrabian who picked up 3 elements which make a conversation successful. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the 3 elements. Probably if it was interactive, you could have shared it yourself. The 3 elements we are looking at would be your non-verbal communication, which talks about your expressions, your body language, your hand gestures. Yeah, so the 3 elements which we discussed was one, the non-verbal communication. Then we have the paraverbal communication, which is your pitch, your tone, your volume. Right? Are you angry? Are you excited? Do you sound energetic? Do you sound cheerful? So it was all about the tone and the voice. So that was your paraverbal communication. And then came the 7%, which is your verbal communication, the choice of words. So this was something which he pulled up during the 1960s, and we do have this 55% is non-verbal communication, 38% is your paraverbal communication, 7% is your verbal communication. So we are familiar with how this impacts our interactions. Later came Uri Hazen of Princeton University. So this professor, he researched and he proved that when you observe the brain pattern during in between two people during a successful conversation, when you observe or when you note the changes that takes place in the patterns of the brains of two people, the speaker and the listener, during a successful conversation, he realized that the brains were activated in the same pattern. So both the brains of the two people, the speaker as well as the listener, was in the same pattern. So when does the same pattern happen? Because their brains have synced with each other. So he came up with a theory that to make a conversation successful, you have to sync your brain, like we sync our devices with the Wi-Fi, right? So wherever we go, we sync it. So similarly, any person we meet, if we are able to sync our brain, just like how you would sync your phone or your laptop to the Wi-Fi connectivity at a restaurant or maybe at the hotel you're staying or at home. So you do find you're able to sync instantly. Similarly, if you're able to sync instantly with the person you are interacting, right? So he said the two brains can sync and create the same pattern. So when this happens, there is a successful conversation. Now, how do we make it sync? That's the question now, right? So how do we make it sync to activate this heart brain? It's very simple. So probably some of you are already doing it. When you meet a person, you shake hands, you have this broad smile on your face. We all know the best expression on the face is a smile. So you have this broad smile on the face, you maintain eye contact, you have a firm handshake which exudes confidence, right? And if at that point your thoughts are positive, right, you have the positive vibes, you mean to connect to this person, to do something good to this person, right? If you're able to connect to this person, if you have something at the back of your mind, you have an ulterior motive and you're trying to put on an act and say like, oh, it was great meeting you, and you have a smile, trust me, the other person can sense it. They will know that you do have an ulterior motive. The vibes connect, the brains are able to connect and sense that. So when you connect with a person, it takes 0.7 seconds for the person to understand whether you're a friend or a foe. So what happens is, when you do not have positive vibes and there is an ulterior motive to your interaction or to your meeting up with somebody, or starting with a greeting with somebody, they can sense it. Hence, it stays good if you can genuinely be positive and exude positive vibe, radiation. I mean, positive vibes. If you're able to exude positive vibes, then definitely it helps, because what happens is they can sense this positivity in you. As you shake hands, you greet, and you maintain eye contact, you're able to do this. And when they sense these vibes, that is what happens is your heartbeat beats at a calm note, right? It is at a speed or a rhythm which is very calm and controlled. So immediately the messages which are sent to your body is also calm and controlled. If for some reason you're anxious, you're tensed, and you're palpitating, or for some reason your heartbeat is racing, it's an uncomfortable scenario, you're not in your comfort zone, it's something new to you, or it's a kind of an adrenaline rush is there. So any of those scenarios, what happens? Your heartbeat is erratic. So when it is erratic, it can send messages only which requires attention at that moment. It cannot send messages which are positive, messages which mean to say like, I mean good for you, messages mean to say I care for you. It cannot send those messages at that point. It can only send messages to survive, which means like, okay, there is a situation here and I need to take control of it. And the heartbeat is erratic at that point, which means your message is limited to that moment of how to get that erratic heartbeat into control. So you cannot give any message beyond that. So keeping this in mind, if you are aware of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, there is something called as matching and mirroring. So what are we doing here at this point? We are using one of the techniques, matching and mirroring. Matching is, there is a time lapse. So the person is probably moving forward, then you also move forward. Or the person probably brushes their hair or doing something, and then after a few seconds, probably you also would do something similar. So that is matching. There is a time lapse in what you do. Mirroring is probably the person is, you know, a gesture or an action which you imitate immediately. So as they do it, even you do it. So it is like how the mirror projects immediately what you do, your actions, it projects right away, right? So these are the two techniques, mirroring and matching. So when you use these two techniques, we also talk about how you can match the rhythm of the heartbeat. So if you're able to match the rhythm of the heartbeat of the other person with whom you are interacting, within a radius of 10 feet, your heart and the brain can sync with anybody around you within a radius of 10 feet. So to sync with them, you'll have to match their heartbeat. Or the easiest way, if you feel, oh my God, how do I match my heartbeat with the heartbeats of another person? I do not know. Or how do I match? So very simple. You don't have to match the heartbeat in the sense you sit and count the heartbeats. It's very simple. All you have to do is match your breathing. So when you match your breathing, that automatically matches the rhythm of the heartbeat as well with the other person. So one, you can match the breathing with the other person, which means you need to observe their chest. So if you're able to observe their chest, you know how is it a deep breathing or heavy breathing, light breathing, shallow breathing. So if you're able to understand that, then you can probably have the same controlled breathing to simulate what the other person has, and that helps both of you to sync. So that is what this heart brain is all about. So see how well you can sync with the other person. So begin with positive thoughts, positive vibes, confidence, smile, sync with the other person. Remember, the heart brain is the basic of the entire brain system which we have. It is the basic wiring of the system. And you can sync very well with little effort, as long as you're positive, and you're able to radiate that positivity. So keep that in mind and sync with anybody around you within a radius of 10 feet. I hope that was clear to you, and if you do have any questions on that, do share. We can probably address it right away or at the end of the session, whichever works good for you. So I would move forward with the primitive brain. This is the oldest form of brain. When I say the oldest form, what I mean is we're talking about the evolution of brain, right? So we had Paul MacLean, who came up with this triune brain theory. He talks about three brains. So initially it was the reptile brain, which is, we'll be looking at it much later towards the end of this six brains. So we initially had the reptile brain, and then came with evolution of the human race, we reached the limbic brain was identified. And the limbic brain is the emotional brain, you are all aware of it. And then came the neocortex, which was much later. So the limbic brain was first identified in the mammals, and later, much later, as evolution took place, we came across the neocortex, which is in the primates. So we will look at that a little later, neocortex. So that is why I'm mentioning this as the oldest brain. So the primitive brain. So what is the prime purpose of this primitive brain? Two things. One, it wants to protect. And protect what? It wants to protect your ego and your body. So if there is a threat to your ego, or if there is a threat to the safety of your body, the primitive brain is activated. So these are the conditions under which this primitive brain can be activated. So one, it goes into the protective zone. And when does it go into the protective zone? When it senses a threat to your body or your ego. It goes into the activation mode. And when it goes into the activation mode, it is such that there are four outcomes. So when this is activated, how do we know the primitive brain is activated? The person will go into four modes. Like in your cell phones, you do have the night mode, day mode, and portrait mode. We have different modes, right? So similarly, when the primitive brain is activated in you, you will go into four modes. One, the fight mode. Two, the fight mode, the flight mode, and three, the freeze mode. And last would be the appease. Appease mode would mean the peaceful mode. You want to maintain peace. Like I do not want to fight, I do not want to flight, or I don't want to freeze. So I just go into a peaceful mode. Let's keep it peaceful and resolve this issue right away. So that is the appease mode. So I could go into any of these four modes. So when a person goes into any of these modes, let us say you're having a conversation, and you find that suddenly this person wants to argue with you, or seems to, just something you said has triggered, and maybe probably the word loser, you said probably the word loser, and okay, this seems to be like the job of a loser. You probably didn't even say that you are a loser, you only said this seems to be the job of a loser, or the outcome of somebody who was distracted. And the word distracted or the word loser could have triggered a kind of reaction in this person, because they've gone into either the flight mode, fight mode, freeze mode, or the appease mode. So straight away, you know now something which you said has triggered this person and activated their primitive brain. So this is where we apply conversational intelligence. How do we get them out of this zone? Because we don't want them to get into this primitive brain activation mode. Why? Because one, when this is activated, all other brains become non-functional. So hence, it will hijack your other brains, which means we need to move out of this zone. Now the person cannot express logical thinking, rational thinking, or practical thought processes cannot take place in this person. Hence, we need to get them out of this primitive mode. Let us assume you're looking into your online shopping, you're looking into a lot of images, and you find this product which is very interesting. There is a thumbnail picture of the product. What would you do to get to know more about the product? Probably see various angles of it, or you want to know the texture of it, or you want to know what kind of fabric has been used to make this shirt or something. You want to know more about it. What do you normally do? Well, so I assume this is what you would have answered, double clicking. So you do double click, and it sort of enlarges, and you're able to see it from various angles, and you do know, okay, this is made of this fabric, or this is how it's going to be looking in probably better lighting. You're more clued up about how it would be. Similarly, when you find something which the other person said has triggered your primitive brain, okay, so you are going into one of these modes, the fight, flight, freeze, or appease mode. You have gone into one of these modes. So you're able to sense it, that you are into this mode and I need to get out of it, because you're having a hijack, right? You're no longer in your senses at this point because your ego is hurt. Maybe in some cases, primitive man, it was threat, right? Or survival. So there, the primitive man was affected because he came across a lion or a tiger, and while he was hunting, and then this primitive brain would have been activated. But for us, it is not the lions and tigers; it is the emails or the escalations or the loss of a file. These are the triggers which we have nowadays. So you find that these triggers activate the primitive brain. So what do we do now? What did this person say? Okay, this person used the word loser. Now, what does this person mean by this word loser? Or what does this person mean by I'm disappointed with you? What does this word disappoint mean to this person? In what perspective is this person using it? So when you start asking questions about that particular word or action or gesture, which triggered that fear or triggered that feeling of insecurity or the feeling of being inadequate, any of those feelings was triggered in you, right? So the moment you double click on it and you question it, automatically you're going into the curiosity mode. Now, because you're asking further questions, in what perspective did this person use this? Or why did this person use this word? What does this person mean by using this word? So when you start questioning it, you're now like a child who's gone into the curiosity mode. You are exploring, you are inquiring about something. So automatically you're moved away from the primitive brain to the neocortex. So this is how you shift your conversation to anybody. Whether your primitive brain is triggered, you can shift by double clicking, or the other person's primitive brain is activated, then you can double click on some particular issue and make them focus on that so that they can move away from the primitive brain. So either way, you can use this knowledge. So when it triggers in you or when it is activated in somebody else. In both ways, you can see how you can shift by using the technique of double clicking. I hope we are clear on that. And this happens when your ego or your survival or security to your body is under threat. That is when this brain gets activated. I trust that was clear. If not any clarifications required, please do share the questions. We will look into it. So we now move on to the limbic brain. The limbic brain is a houses all your memories. It is a storehouse for your emotional experiences. It has your memories. This is the brain which generally stimulates excitement in you. So this part of the brain is where you get excited about going to a restaurant or choosing a place where you want to chill out for the weekend or going on a vacation, the choices you make. So all these choices that take place in this limbic brain, because this is where that exciting element, that emotional connect. Why do I want to go to Paris on my 25th wedding anniversary? Why do I want to go to Maldives during my 50th birthday? So, the various reasons or the choices happen in the limbic brain, because this is the brain which tries to make your life exciting. All the emotions like sad, disgusted, sorrow, feeling ecstatic, joyfulness, happiness, all these arise from this brain, the limbic brain. So these emotions arise over here, and it is also a general stimulator. We did see that, and it houses your memories. It stores your emotional experiences, and most important, which I find you would find useful for yourself if you want to learn something. Now during this COVID, we have been looking at certifications and how you could upgrade your skills professionally, or you can go in for certifications. A lot of learning has been happening during this COVID, and similarly, you could be having children, and it's very important to understand that the limbic brain is responsible for the interest in learning. So probably this will help you to understand how you can trigger that interest in the child. If you find the child is distracted or not patient enough to go through the studies or not able to retain information. So any of those issues, you must understand the limbic brain needs to be activated. So that's something which you could look at. The L&D of any company can look into this limbic brain, because if the associates or the executives, you're able to activate the limbic brain, then they will show more interest in learning and also retaining information. So this is one brain which you could look at in terms of learning as well. So how do we activate this limbic brain? So it is all about listen to connect. Why listen to connect? The limbic brain has one sole purpose, just like how the primitive brain has one sole purpose, to protect you from any threats to your body or ego. So limbic brain has one sole purpose, to check in any social scenario, do you fit in? So let us say you have reached a pantry and you see people communicating or conversing there, a group of people, and you want to go and join them. So you walk towards them, and as they see you approaching, maybe they stop conversing, and they just act silent and start sipping their tea. And after a while, when you reach them, they say, "Okay, bye, bye," and they just vanish. So then you would feel excluded or included. What will it be? I mean, definitely you would feel excluded. So the limbic brain is that brain which constantly scans all social interactions to check whether you are included or excluded. So any given scenario in any social interaction, the limbic brain is constantly scanning to check whether am I welcome in this group? Do these people like me? Do they want me to be part of them? Have they included me in their group? Am I part of their club or part of their clique? There's always this question of exclusiveness and inclusiveness, and this is what this brain does all the time. So what we have to do at this point to make a person feel included, all you have to do is connect to their emotional world. So imagine you're meeting a customer, you're meeting a client, or you have a child who's probably being rebellious. All you have to do is connect with the emotional world of this person, connect to the emotional world, and listen to connect. So the key word here will be just like double clicking in the primitive brain. Here we're using listen to connect. All you have to do is listen. Listen without judgments, listen without assumptions, listen without any preconceived notions, listen without the concept of, okay, let this person stop and so that I can pour out what I have to share and what I feel is right. I want to share with this person. So let me just wait for him to stop and I'm ready to pour out what I need to do. So it's not, you're listening, not listening for that. You're listening to connect with them on an emotional level, which helps them to open up, helps them to treat you as a confidant, helps them to share what they're going through. And all you have to do is just listen. Do not at that point share your advice or share solutions or try to say, oh yeah, even I had the same experience and this happened to me last year and there was somebody in my team who had this issue and I sorted it out. And immediately don't shift the conversation from them to you. Yeah, that would again become conversational narcissism. So what is conversational narcissism? When somebody is trying to say something, you immediately say, oh, yeah, even I had the same experience. Your brother had an accident. Oh yes, 2 years ago my brother had an accident and I know what it means and how it can affect the entire family. So you have shifted the conversation from the other person to you. So your response has shifted the focus, the central focus of the conversation from the other person to you. So make sure you're not a conversational narcissist. So the limbic brain, you should avoid being a conversational narcissist. You should make sure your responses are supporting. So make sure your responses are supporting. Listen to connect. Listen carefully without judging, and make sure you ask questions which makes them share more with you. So when you listen, what is the next thing which you will do? The most natural reaction would be to ask more questions. Oh, what happened? Why did this happen? Or where did the accident occur? So how has it been? Is he being treated? So definitely when you are able to empathize with the person, there is a series of questions. So all you have to do is ask more questions and then the connection takes place automatically. So listen to connect. This is what the limbic brain is. And you can tap the potential of this limbic brain for learning, for your emotions, to make life more exciting and to stop stereotyping your life. Activate the limbic brain. And definitely you can build more trust with the other person when you feel included, right? When you feel included, you build trust with the other person because you feel they've accepted you, then you also accept them. So there is trust at this point. Whereas the primitive brain, they feel threatened, which means there is distrust at that point. So here we find there is trust. From here on, we find how as the brain evolves, we build more trust. So that is what we are going to look at, how to shift so that we can build trust. I hope the limbic brain was clear. Here, any questions, please do share. We can always look into that. Do you want me to pause or do you want me to continue at this point?
There are two questions. Do you want to take them?
Yeah, I can take them now.
Okay. This is by Cynthia.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any brain exercises to develop any of those 6 brains which you have mentioned?
Oh, definitely. There are tons of exercises. I'm glad you asked that question because that's my favorite part of this entire module. Yes, you can do loads. So there were these scientists. They were researching on the DNA. So obviously the DNA was not it. The DNA structure was not it found out at that point, and they were the first ones to research on it. So what happened? They were locked up in the room in the research lab, and they were locked up for days and for months, and trying to, take in all those figures and data which validated about the DNA structure. So every time they went back to give a presentation to their community, they found something failed because they're not able to answer a particular question, or some data did not validate what they shared. So somehow there was incoherence in the data which they shared. So they would go back and again log themselves and continue with their research. So at one point, what happened? They went for a walk because it was just too much for them, and they went for a walk and did a bit of exercise, and they came back in, and that is when they realized when they walked and they exercised and they came back and went back to research, they were able to achieve much more than they did staying locked up and working on it day and night without eating or without stepping out and without interacting with anybody. So slowly they realized every time they went out, stepped out, walked and exercised and came back in, they did better that particular day, and they were moving towards their finding. So that is when they realized that when you exercise, you produce endorphins, the happy hormone, which is exactly the opposite of cortisol, the stress hormone. So this keeps you energized, and this is the only time when you exercise, it's the only time when the brain cells regenerate. It cannot regenerate when I'm talking to you. It cannot regenerate when you're having food or when you're sleeping. It cannot regenerate. The brain cells regenerate only when you exercise. And when I say exercise, minimum 45 minutes of exercise, because first 15 minutes would be warm up. Your body is just warming up to the movement. And then 30 minutes is when the actual exercise takes place and the endorphins start happening. So not in the first 15 minutes. So hence minimum 45 minutes you need to exercise. So it could be jogging, running, cycling, walking, anything. Even I do jumping jacks because now we aren't stepping out. So I do it in my terrace. So anything which you can do, don't exactly wait for a gym or don't exactly wait for a trainer. It is something which you can do where you are by yourself. That of course exercises are there. When you talk about brain exercise, especially, exercise itself is the only way you can regenerate your brain cells and let it grow. So people who find I do not have time, I work so much, and during COVID I'm working from home, which means I'm putting in more hours to work, I do not have time to exercise. What happens is you will eventually notice that as you grow older, by the time you're in your 40s and 50s, it can lead to dementia, and invariably it can lead to Alzheimer's. So you must understand it is not worth finding an excuse to not exercise. It is better that you exercise because it can lead to dementia and Alzheimer's. So please do find time to exercise, that 45 minutes of agile exercise where your heartbeat is racing, because that's the only time the brain cells regenerate. Others, of course, can be like your Sudoku, puzzles, Rubik's Cube, any of these exercises, crossword puzzles and brain teasers, any of these exercises on a daily basis will enhance your problem solving skills as well as keeps your brain active, agile, and sharpens your brain. So all these are skills. We are not born with a natural ability. If Einstein was able to solve and he's called the father of problem solving, it is because he solved problems on an everyday basis. He didn't do it once in a blue moon. He was solving problem every minute. Now, how often are we solving? That's the question we need to look at. We are so dependent on the cell phones, right? So use your brains and activate it by practicing brain teasers, puzzles, riddles, Rubik's Cube, solve it in 3 minutes. So any of those things you could do. I hope that answered your brain exercises.
Yeah, ma'am. I hope so.
You had one more question?
Yeah, ma'am. This is by Mahat. Which brain should be dominated for a leader to have a good leadership quality? As a leader, he or she should be good in conversing with their teams, right?
Exactly. Mahat, your question came just a little too soon, because the answer for your question is as we proceed further. So I'll probably just move forward and eventually your question will be answered, because we still haven't reached the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex. So that is what is the brain that needs to be activated to be a good leader. So we are right now in the limbic. We have done the heart brain and the primitive brain, the limbic. So we have 3 more to go, and that will answer your question. So I can move forward. Yes.
There's just one more question,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. This is by Nirmal. How can I trigger and develop my kid's brain for having good conversational intelligence? Are there any top tools which I have to be practicing during the growing stage?
Definitely, Nirmal. That's very important as a parent to trigger this. I wish universities and schools taught this conversational intelligence. It is very important because 0 to 5, the brain makes its patterns. The mapping is done in the brain. So any psychologist will be telling you this. For a child, 0 to 5 is the formative years when the brain maps. And what mapping takes place between this age is what the person tends to become or tends to use as they grow up into an adult. But it's never too late. Now, let us say our mapping is already done, and we had no contribution in this mapping because we were not in control of what we were exposed to at the age of 0 to 5. We don't know what is it we saw or we heard or we did. We are not aware of it. So our mapping is already done. But now, as an adult, you can, having understood conversational intelligence, you're able to change it. Similarly, the child also, the 0 to 5 age group is already done and over. And what you can do is probably explain to them what the limbic brain, right? The emotional connect. So have an emotional connect. Have you ever noticed people who succeed, an Ottoman's child, or the transgenders who became IAS officers? There's always an emotional connect to their learning, right? Why do they want to achieve? Why do they want to excel in what they're doing? Because there is an emotional connect. They would have had some experience which made them realize, yes, I want to prove myself. That emotion is what strikes the fire in them, that ignites the fire in them, right? So similarly, if we have that emotional connect, then definitely the child would be able to get into this learning mode and get more out of the brain. So let us look at all the 6 brains, and probably we can come back to that question and what are the ways we can activate in ourselves as well as in children. Yeah, so I'll move forward. Are we good?
Yes, Durga.
Okay.
Later we'll come back with the questions. Thank you.
So we looked at the limbic brain. Now, Mahat, to answer your question, we are here at the neocortex. Neo has 2 words in it, neo and cortex. Neo is the Latin word for new, and cortex is the Latin word for bark of the tree. Now, this is a fairly new, as you can see, neocortex is a new brain. So what we mean by new brain, old brain, we call the primitive brain as the oldest brain, and then we're calling this as the new brain. And we call the prefrontal cortex as the youngest brain. So what we mean by this, we are not talking about the age here, we're talking about the evolution. So as man evolved to what we are today, the brain also evolved. So that is why we call as the oldest brain and the youngest brain and the new brain. So in that context, we talk about the brains being young and old and new, right? So the neocortex. So what does the neocortex do? The neocortex wraps the rest of the brain, which is your primitive brain, limbic brain, the reptile brain. It wraps the rest of the brain. So that is the neocortex. Now this is where your strategic thinking takes place, your thought processes take place, your active memory, your working memory is stored over here. You also have 2 kinds of memory, right? One is the stored memory and one is the active memory or the working memory. So both memories are in this neocortex. This is where your logical thinking takes place, your analytical skills takes place, your spatial intelligence. So all intelligence is activated in the neocortex. This is the root of all your thought processes, and it's very important to keep this positive. Now, how do I trigger this? A person is now angry for some reason. Okay, I said something, the person has become angry, and I seem to have activated the primitive brain. So I know when we're angry, what are the changes we find in ourselves. We'll probably come to that a little later. So by these changes, I do recognize the person has been active, or even let's take the simple tone. The person is now angry and high-pitched, so we know the person has activated the primitive brain. I want to move them to the neocortex, the thinking brain. So the technique over here is very simple. Ask questions for which you do not have answers. So the moment you ask questions for which you do not have answers, the person feels trusted. So which means you trust my ability you trust my intelligence, you have faith that I can solve something which you are not capable of solving, which means you trust me. And the moment you trust, I feel that you trust me, I open all doors and my brain syncs with your brain. So that is where the relationship starts building. So automatically the brain syncs with your brain, and because I know that you trust me and you felt I can give you the answer to something which you do not know, makes me feel exalted, makes me feel great, and hence I open up and I come up with a solution. Because of the faith you have in me, I come up with a solution. So this is how the neocortex is activated, right? So this can be in hijack mode when we activate the primitive brain. So this will not be functional at that point. So how does the neocortex take place? When we receive messages through the eyes or through the ears, what we have heard or what we have seen, we receive messages and the neocortex deciphers it. It sends signals to the rest of the body. So all your voluntary movements is controlled by the neocortex. So at some point, there is a short circuit. Something that this person says triggers, and the message, instead of reaching the neocortex, reaches the amygdala. And where is this amygdala? It is in the limbic brain. So we'll come back to that when in detail when we watch a video, and then we can discuss that further. So we find that what we need to activate in any conversation will be the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex as a leader, right? To achieve your team, to take your team towards high performance or high production, we need to activate the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex. So you are able to identify one limbic brain. How do I activate? I have to make this person feel included. So give them opportunity to speak, say something nice to them, make them feel cared for, right? Make them feel you are included. We accept you the way you are. We know you are unique in your own way, and we are unique in our own way. So we have our differences, and yet we can work together. So we are able to explain that we may be different from each other, yet we are one family and one team and one group. So we're able to reiterate that the limbic brain is activated. So the trust starts there and reaches a peak as we move on to the neocortex and the prefrontal. So let's keep that in mind. So the technique here is ask questions for which you do not have answers. Do not spoon feed and you give the solutions to problems. Do not spoon feed and you take all the decisions and just give them the decisions. Don't trust it on them. So instead of that, ask them, what should we do in this scenario? Now we have COVID-19. How do we extend our business? How do we continue our business? So ask them to come up with solutions, and that would make them feel more responsible and activate their ownership and accountability. So this is the neocortex, the thinking brain. The most important, as you questioned, the prefrontal cortex. This is known as the younger brain or the executive brain. Why it's called the executive brain? Because this is where all the executive functions take place. So what does an executive or a leader do? You have strategies, you motivate, you inspire, you mitigate risk, you take decisions, you segregate what is good, what is bad. You are able to differentiate between what is acceptable, what is unacceptable. You are able to identify what is best and what is better. So all these distinctions take place in the prefrontal cortex. All decision making takes place in the prefrontal cortex. Quite often we teach our employees, or when there is a scenario and an escalation, we try and tell the customer, I do understand how it feels to be affected or the production to be impacted, and we are doing our best to troubleshoot, right? So at this point, when we use the word empathy, where does this empathy take place? How are we able to empathize with the client? How are we able to empathize with the stakeholder? This happens in the prefrontal cortex. So this is where the brain distinguishes between creating an experience for the customer. We talk about customer-centric experience. So how do we create that experience? How do we differentiate between better and best? And this is exactly behind the forehead, if you notice, okay? So these are later developments in the brain formation or the evolution of the brain. So that is why we do have the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. You're all aware of the right brain is the creative brain, where you do, you're more into arts and fine arts and probably colors, and you know how to go about creativity, innovation, and all that. And left brain is more analytical, logical, more data oriented and task oriented. So that would be your left brain. So the two hemispheres, the neocortex and the prefrontal, came in much later. So that's why we look at them as young. So definitely to answer your question, as a leader, we need to activate the prefrontal cortex. So let's look at the dashboard. At that point, you will understand how do we reach this stage? How do we activate the prefrontal? Okay, so probably at that point, we can look once again at this prefrontal cortex. Now comes the gut brain. The gut brain has changed how the world looked at health, your brain, your thinking ability, as well as your moods. So the gut brain proved to all doctors and research scientists that there is a strong link between your health, your thinking ability, your brain, and your digestive system. So this was something which amazed the people when they found out this can happen. So this affects your moods, it affects your thinking, it affects your digestion, it affects your bowel system, it affects your brain functionality. So everything is interconnected, and this interconnection they didn't expect, because as you notice, the digestive system is somewhere else in the body and the brain is up there. So they didn't foresee this connection. But when they discovered this connection, it amazed everybody. So what is this connection? So this connection is the gut-brain axis. So the gut-brain axis is bidirectional. As you can see, the gut can send messages to the brain. Similarly, the brain can send messages to your gut. So I'll make it simple to understand. So you find that the gut has this microbacteria, which is very necessary for the good health of our body. So we have something called the probiotics. We do have probiotics which are sold in the supermarket. We consume that once a day or something. Or we do have curd, fresh curd, which we take as a probiotic, and something called as prebiotic. So basically, this microbacterial survival in the gut is very important to ensure you stay in good health. And only when you're in good health, the messages that go to the brain is also positive. So in case you have a bowel system where you're constipated, or you feel bloated, or you feel uncomfortable, or you had some food which doesn't make you feel good, so any of those scenarios, if you notice, you will not feel great, your performance will be low, your productivity will be low. Why? Because it affects your brain, it affects your thought process. So all these days we did study about how negative thoughts impact the brain, how it's very important to have positive thoughts, very important to use positive words. So now the gut-brain axis proved it's very important to also know what to eat. Why what you eat is so important, what you look at is so important, because this can influence your brain and your thinking process and your memory power and your learning ability to a great extent. So your learning ability, your thinking capacity, your memory power, and especially in children, all these are very important because they're still in their prime years of learning. So all this is influenced by what you eat. So definitely food with preservatives is not acceptable. Food with high dose of sugar or any amount of sugar is not acceptable. And any food which causes discomfort is not acceptable, or any food which kills the microbacteria in your system is not acceptable. So it's good to have onion, garlic, asparagus, any of those natural food which creates this bacteria, and yeast which keeps you healthy. And this connects with your moods, connects with your thinking, and keeps your bowel system in place. So this is a bidirectional brain system. So we find that this nervous system is called as enteric nervous system. So this is the enteric nervous system. The gut brain is also known as the enteric nervous system. Now, why is it called the enteric nervous system? The gastrointestinal tract, the GI tract, has cells. Now these cells house 90% of your serotonin. Now what is serotonin? It is a kind of a hormone which probably decides your learning ability, your memory power, and your moods. All three are decided by serotonin. And where is the serotonin? It is in the gastrointestinal tract of your digestive system. 90% of serotonin is located there. Maybe the rest is dispersed around the body. So hence, if this 90% is not kept happy and kept taken care of, it will definitely affect your movement, your thought process, your signals to the rest of the body, and most importantly, your health. So this impacts your health. It can lead to depression, it can lead to frustration, it can lead to ostracization. When I say ostracizing, I'm talking about how you stay away, isolation from others, and you just want to be isolated and be like a cabin fever, right? You just want to shut yourself. So it can lead to any of those behaviors if this is not taken care of. Probably we can look into this more if you have any questions later.
Yes, we have few questions.
Okay, maybe you can share that now then.
Yes, by Nirmal. How can I trigger and develop my kid's brain for having good conversational intelligence? Are there any tools which I have to be practiced during their growing stage?
Yeah, so this we will be looking at the tools as we go further. There are tools for this, so we'll be looking into that. As of now, we have understood how each brain is impacted, and we do know the choice of words are very important, right? And we do know the functionality of each brain. So understanding the words, very simple. Always make sure the words are positive. So never use a negative word. So never say you're fit to become a clerk, you're fit to be a sweeper, that is what you're fit for. So never use any negative language when it concerns a child. No negative language. So it has to be inspiring and promising words, positive words, power of words. So remember that. And the rest of the tools, as far as conversational intelligence, we'll be looking into it as we proceed. So that will answer this question.
All
Anything
right. This is by Santosh Chowdhury.
Mhm.
Will playing video games activate those 6 different brains?
Video game is good if it is in a small dose. Anything is good, like dark chocolate is good in a small dose, coffee is good in a small dose, green tea is good in a small dose. Anything which exceeds a particular dosage, so probably maybe 30 minutes of video gaming, yes, it helps their motor skills, it helps in coordinating their skills, so definitely it is helping. But exposure to digital devices for a longer period can lead to autism. So it definitely affects the brain and it impacts the brain because you're looking for quick wins, right? The game finishes in a span of 45 minutes or 30 minutes and then it's a quick win for you or a quick loss. Whereas life is not about quick wins, right? We to achieve a particular goal we work for years or sometimes for months or sometimes for days. So it doesn't work like a video game. So what happens, they cannot associate what happens in a video game with what happens in reality, and hence there's a mismatch, and that is what leads to depression. When they find this mismatch, when they go into a real world, they're not able to understand this mismatch. They think life is a video game, and that affects them greatly and impacts their thinking process greatly. Yes, it affects their focus, it affects their mental agility. Uh, so it needs to be highly limited, and especially 0 to 2, no digital devices, no televisions, no iPads for 0 to 2 age group because it can lead to cooking up the brain and autism.
Fine. How to control what to eat and what to see to trigger the gut brain?
Uh, Good food. When I talk about good, when I say good food, healthy food, so preferably no non-veg. So healthy food, natural diet, more fruits and vegetables. I mean, I guess we're all aware of that. Start your day with fruits and vegetables. Start your day with dry fruits. Probably a good lunch with a spread of pulses and proteins and cheese. That could be your lunch, and sautéed vegetables for your dinner. Yeah, so it has to be something natural, nothing overcooked, not too spicy, not too many spices, not too many artificial flavors, and definitely a big no to preservatives, colors, additives, any of these packaged products, aerated drinks, any of these. Yes, definitely a big no to all that. And plus we all know the 5 whites, right? Your white salt, your white rice, your white milk, your white sugar, and maida, the white maida, the flour. So we are all familiar with avoiding the 5 whites. Yeah, so you need to follow these rules, and definitely you see the difference it makes to your brain.
All right. Do we have any proven research to support these different kinds of brain and its function?
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yes, definitely. What I'm talking to you is about the proven research. So there is this book on conversational intelligence, which talks about the dashboard and the brains and how it impacts the brain. So one, the book is a research after many years of research is what the book has 35 years of research is what the book has come out with. So that is definitely proof enough that this does impact. Even otherwise, if generally you can Google to see how the brain is impacted, or you can Google the gut brain axis. If any of these, if you Google, you straight away get the response to it and how it impacts your thinking. So all these days we thought only thoughts impact the brain, right? We kept thinking, start your day with a positive thought. So even the food impacts, and your digestive system impacts, your bowel system impacts. Which means you need to constantly drink sufficient water, so the bowel movement is facilitated and you're not constipated. So water intake is very important. Having the right food is very important, and not staying hungry is very important. Quite often we are so caught up with work, we don't get up, we don't move, and we do not eat on time. So that is another reason why this gut brain gets affected. So make sure you have your timely dosage of nutrition. Keep that in mind.
All right.
Yeah.
Are the tools for enabling different brains different for different age group?
No, the same. Listen to connect is the same. Double click is the same. Ask questions for which you do not have answers is the same. Yeah, it doesn't matter which age group. It is just what we naturally do, right? Even a child is curious enough and asks questions. Even a child listens to the parent when they say something, or especially when somebody narrates a story, you'll find the child is engrossed. So listening to connect is something which even a child does. So nothing different for based on age groups. It would be the same for adult as well as children.
All right.
Diet
Sorry.
diet matters for everybody. Yes, sorry. You were saying something.
All right. So I was reading the next question. So can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Gautam is asking, how do you see indoor and outdoor games for brain development for millennial kids today?
Oh, very important, Gautami. That's a fantastic question. Outdoor is very important for the simple reason because these games, if you remember going back to our childhood, we had outdoor games more in our life, right? And it gives you a natural ability to explore surfaces. And outdoor games also, if you notice, unfortunately, we are now around in concrete spaces. If you need to give me a minute, I think I need to charge.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to connect this. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
So we're looking at how playing outside, you are connected to earthing. You are able to connect yourself to the natural earth. So it's very important to be there on earthing. There's a huge difference between outdoor and indoor games. So I guess we need to handle that. The natural environment is different. I'm sure all of you agree to that.
Yes. Do I proceed with the next question?
Yes.
Okay. How to develop a new resolution into a habit?
How to develop a new resolution into a habit?
Yes.
This is we have to serotonin, right? We talked about serotonin, which is lining your gastrointestinal. So this is for memory and learning. We did
Durga,
talk about all that.
sorry to intervene. Are you showing us some charts in support of these questions? Because we couldn't see your video
Uh,
except for the PPT.
yeah, just check. Is it
Yes,
visible?
yes.
Yeah,
Fine.
that's good.
Yes, we can go. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we're looking at the question was. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, how to develop a new resolution into a habit.
Yeah. So we're talking about dopamine. So we do have different, we talked about endorphins when you exercise, how we produce endorphins. Similarly, serotonin is in your gut. So hence it's very important to see this bidirectional message from the, and most often the message from the gut is higher than the message from the brain to the digestive system. So which means you need to definitely keep track of your diet. So similarly, you have to produce dopamine to achieve your goals. So the kind of energy you have, and when you achieve your goals, when you're excited about it, and to be excited about something, or to a resolution, to be excited about completing the resolution, which brain do we activate? Oh, I'm sorry, you don't respond. Yes, which brain do we activate? The limbic brain, right? The limbic brain. So that is where you get this question of how to activate to achieve goals and maintain resolutions. So have an emotional connect with what you're doing. Understand why are you doing it? What is the emotional reason behind it? So the moment it opens up your emotional world and you feel, okay, this is going to be my ticket to get into this group, or this is going to be my ticket to my career, or this is going to be my ticket to my promotion. That will be motivation enough to complete the resolution. So this comes from your limbic brain.
All right. Um, just a small confirmation from your end with regard to the previous question on indoor and outdoor games. So, were you showing any chart or something, Durga?
Right now,
For the previous question, maybe we lost the camera, your camera. So, I just wanted to
no,
confirm.
I wasn't, sorry.
Or,
No, I
all
wasn't
right.
sure.
All right. One last question.
Mhm.
How to not let our ego interfere in our conversations?
So it's very simple, right? That's exactly what we discussed in the primitive brain. So glad you're able to ask that question, because very few ask this question. Uh, no, most people say I don't have ego, right? They don't want to agree to it that they are egoistic. So I'm glad you're able to ask this question. So it's important to understand that the primitive brain is activated when your ego is hurt, right? And it wants to protect your ego. So that is when either you lose your temper, you become angry, or that is when you flare up, or you probably even walk out, or bang the phone, or bang the door. Any of those behaviors can happen because your ego is hurt. So when you realize I'm doing this behavior, because my ego is hurt. So all you have to do is double click, divert your attention, move on to some other question, ask for something else. So you move on to the limbic brain and you shift from the primitive brain. So it's as simple as that. So that is the only way you can avoid the ego impacting your conversation.
All right.
Shift from there immediately. So it's very easy to identify when the primitive brain is activated. You'll be watching a video, it will make you understand how it is activated. So you can identify that.
Fine.
All
You
right.
can go ahead with your presentation, Durga. If any question comes up, we would stop you.
Thank you. So we're looking at the brain stem. So the brain stem is, we have finished the 6 brains. So the brain stem is the reptile brain, which we talked about, right? The initial brain. This is nothing but the brain which helps you to survive, or the survival brain. So this is known as the brain stem, the reptile brain, or the survival brain. This is the brain which helps you to breathe, helps you to eat, which makes you feel like I should be doing this, I should be anything. What do we do for survival? What are the things you do for your survival? Like your breathing and staying away from fire, or any of those things which you do, all comes from this brain stem. So this is vital for your being alive. Anyway, this is not related to our conversational intelligence, but just to complete learning about the complete brain, this has been included to understand how we survive. All right. So I trust the brains and how they can be activated, and how we can shift from one brain to another brain has been understood. So we do look at neocortex. So we looked at ask questions for which you do not have answers to activate that. The prefrontal cortex, all you have to do is reframe, refocus, and redirect when you want to move from something which is not working out and there is a problem, you want to find a solution. So reframe the scenario or refocus, shift your focus from one end to the other end. Automatically, you will find the solution. So these are the strategies we are going to use. Let's watch this video and then we can discuss what we watched.
We've all had conversations where we've left feeling like they just missed the mark. Why does this happen? Well, part of the reason has to do with our brain, specifically the amygdala. What's the amygdala, you ask? It's only Sarah's favorite part of the brain. The amygdala is the part of the brain that is constantly scanning your environment for threats so that it can move you into action so it can protect you. Those threats might be physical, mental, emotional, or even to our ego. One of the ways I like to think about the amygdala is to imagine it's this shaky little neurotic chihuahua. It's shaking and it's nervous and it's ready to bark at anything that it perceives as a threat. Some of us have more neurotic chihuahuas than others. So what does any of this have to do with conversations? When our amygdala is triggered, it hijacks our brain. It pumps our body and our brain full of these chemicals and hormones that shut down parts of our brain. So we lose access to things like logic and reasoning, problem solving, listening, and empathy. All things pretty important to building trust. So when my amygdala is triggered or when your amygdala is triggered, there's no way we can connect and build trust in the same way as when we're calm. So what do you do if you notice the amygdala has been hijacked and you or the other person? That is a really good time to step away, take a breath, and regroup when both parties have had a chance to breathe. Here's your challenge. I want you to do an amygdala audit. Think about a time when you had a stress response and think about what did it feel like when you were going through that. Because the more aware you are about your response, the more likely you can catch it when it's happening in the moment. Or you're more likely to notice it in someone else. And remember, play fully brave.
Yeah, so what did you understand from that? All right, probably you are sharing it. I would get to know. So we did look at amygdala hijack. So we understand that the limbic brain has three main parts to it. So one is the hippocampus, then the hypothalamus, and the amygdala. So the amygdala is a small gray organ, tiny in size, and that is the emotional part of the limbic brain. So what happens, as I mentioned earlier, when we receive a signal, normally it goes to the neocortex, and then the neocortex deciphers the message and transmits messages through the neurons to the rest of the body on what actions we should be taking. But however, in some situations, because of the words which the person used, it may not reach the neocortex and instead it will reach the amygdala. So there is a short circuit. So depending on what word the person used or what non-verbal gesture the person used, or depends on the tone the person used, so it can activate the amygdala. So this is called as the amygdala hijack. Why the hijack? Because when the amygdala is activated, the rest of the brain is inactive. The cortex and the prefrontal does not function. And similarly, the cortisol which is produced hijacks the digestive system. Remember the gut-brain axis. So which means the digestive system also is hijacked. So you must have felt during probably when you're very angry, you feel nauseated, you feel like throwing up, or sometimes when you're grieving for somebody, you lose your appetite. So any of these extreme emotions, whether it is anger or whether it is depression, you'll find that you lose your appetite or you want to throw up and you feel very uncomfortable. Why? Because of this amygdala hijack, which produces cortisol, and this cortisol hijacks the digestive system, and the adrenaline hijacks the thinking brain, the neocortex, and the prefrontal cortex. So how do we identify this amygdala hijack? So when your body starts sweating, when your eyes turn red, and your heart is pumping blood faster, so obviously the rhythm of the heartbeat is much faster. And because your entire circulation is now pumped faster, what happens? Your temperature increases. And because your temperature increases, the body has to cool, right? It has a certain temperature limit. So it wants to cool down. So what will it do? It will start sweating to cool down. So then you start sweating and you find that your hands are trembling. So any of these symptoms you find, automatically you know that you are having an amygdala hijack. So one simple technique is, as I've done, I've explained to people around me in my team or at home that what an amygdala hijack is all about. So we all do have this amygdala hijack. I mean, it's not like we do not have. It's one of the natural responses of the body because the primitive brain has been triggered, right? So when this happens, what we have to do is identify I'm going through an amygdala hijack, and the next minute we can stay away from others. So we can isolate ourselves for the next 20 minutes and say, like, I mean, we'll probably connect later and discuss this issue, or we can talk about this a little later. So just isolate yourself for around 20 minutes. Or if you feel I cannot isolate myself, I need to be amidst those people because it is a team meeting or a review meeting, I need to be sitting there. Then all you have to do is drink water. So when you drink water, the cortisol dissolves in 90 seconds. It dissolves. So when it dissolves, in probably another 20 minutes, your neocortex will come back to normalcy and you'll be able to think once again. But of course, within those 20 minutes, it will still hijack. It cannot switch on and switch off immediately. It takes a minimum of 20 minutes to be able to think. But of course, it is a quick shortcut which I'm talking about, 20 minutes. Normally, it takes a little longer. It takes around half a day or 13 hours or 26 hours. But however, in a professional setup, if you cannot stay away for 13 hours and 26 hours and need to respond immediately, it makes good sense to stay away for 20 minutes at least and drink water and do breathing exercises where for count of 4, 7, 8, 4 you inhale. So make sure you inhale, take a deep breath, you inhale and hold it for the count of 7. So you retain it for the count of 7 and then you exhale for the count of 8. So if you notice, your exhalation is much longer than the duration you take for inhalation. So these are the 7 universal threats that cause amygdala hijack, what we are looking at right now. So we do understand tone, we already discussed, hurt, right? When there is some kind of a threat to the physical body or the ego, we understood the primitive brain is activated. When there's risk and punishment, so quite often we go into this risk and punishment mode. Okay, if you do not achieve this target, I might have to escalate, or I might have to fire you, or I might have to downsize. So there is always this risk and punishment threat. At this point, the primitive brain is activated. And the exclusion threat, when you do not include somebody, probably a racism or maybe a bias or something that can happen in the workplace. So you feel you're not included the person. So that activates the primitive brain. Anger threat, we all know the anger threat, right? When something doesn't go the way we expect, or especially our ego is hurt, then we go into the angry mode. The territory threat, when somebody takes in your place or your cabin or your chair, or this is my printer and somebody else is using it or misusing it. Somebody encroaches, your neighbors have encroached into your property. So any of those reasons can be a reason for amygdala hijack. Status threat, right? When we feel somebody doesn't respect us, or someone doesn't trust us, or someone does not show faith in us, and that is when we feel inadequate and threatened. So these are the various threats that can lead to amygdala hijack. I'm sure there are many more to this if you want to add. Yeah, but we're looking at the 7 universal threats right now. So as I mentioned, 20 minutes you stay away till the hijack subsides by drinking water or you do breathing exercise. But actually it takes a little longer, 20 minutes, because in a working environment, you may not be able to stay away for such a long duration. So for after the anger, the bout of anger, it takes around 13 to 26 hours to come back to a state where you are mentally agile and you're able to take decisions after a thought out process. So that takes time. So please do not take any major decisions when you are angry. So we're looking at how do we activate the entire brain. So this is where some of your question, how do I activate the entire brain? Because we do know all 6 brains are impacted and how do we use them to the best. So we have certain tools where we can access the complete brain. So let's look at that. So in an organizational level, it depends on the quality of the culture, right? So probably we have experienced where Google has always been called as the best employer, and they do have a kind of culture where it is people are empowered to ask questions, people have equal talk time, everybody in the team has equal talk time, everybody in the team can share their views. It is much more relaxed. They do have coffee counters, they do have slides, they do have snooker tables. So the culture itself is very simple when it comes to a kind of a workplace where people are at ease and comfortable. So this culture varies from organization to organization, right? We're not looking at the same culture in all organizations. So it depends on what kind of a culture. Now there can be one-man proprietorship or sole proprietorship where the person could be threatening and they say, if you do not deliver, I'm going to fire you. So then the culture could be different. You do it or leave it. So that can be a different kind of a culture. So of course, when you want to move to the next level of greatness, want to achieve more, it depends greatly on the quality of culture in the organization and the quality of the relationships, right? So we talked about how you activate the 6 brains to build relationships, to build trust, higher level of trust. we did see that when the neocortex and the prefrontal is activated, there is a higher degree of trust. And this trust is what builds a better relationship, and a better relationship is what leads to a successful conversation, and this decides the quality of the conversation. So end of the day, the outcome arrives at the end of the conversation. So which means all these are factors which lead to this conversation, right? So what is the dashboard all about? So the more we learn about how our brain works, so we understand that emotions, our culture is emotion driven, right? We find ads where they show the father sending away the daughter, or we find ads where the father is watching the daughter doing her housework and the husband is not helping. So you find a lot of emotions in these ads, right? So why do they use emotions? Because our culture is very emotion driven. At the end of the day, we fall prey for emotions, and emotions drive our actions and our thoughts. Hence, we always need to connect emotionally, which is basically activate your limbic brain. So how do we connect emotionally with the person around us to build relationships? You have to show that you care for them. So caring doesn't mean always giving a hug or a kiss or something of that sort. It can also be a word. If it's a professional setup, it can be a kind word. It can be a word of empathy. It can be a word of appreciation. It can be a compliment. So in many ways, you can show that you care for this person. It can be a small gift or a small advice or a feedback. So you can show that you care in many ways to the person. It could be a pat on the shoulder. So see in what way are you nurturing an environment where you show the person that you care for them, right? Of course, it is your child. You always give a hug and a kiss, or probably you would even shower them with all the cuddle words, and that is why the endorphins are called as cuddle endorphins. So when we do this to our children, what happens? They produce endorphins. They become very excited and happy, and they produce endorphins. So hence, scientists call this hormone as cuddle hormone, the endorphins. So the caring effect results in endorphins, in building endorphins in your team as well as your family. So both ways, make sure you exhibit this caring effect. As I already mentioned, when the primitive brain is activated, 0.07 seconds, it identifies whether there is a threat or no threat. It is that fast. So which means within your first, even before your first word is delivered, probably even the sight is able to decipher whether you are a threat or a friend. So which means that positive vibe is very important, right? That heart brain, the positive vibe is very important. That is the first brain that connects. So make sure you exude positive vibes. So keep that in mind so that you can avoid this feeling where you can make the other person feel threatened or inadequate or feeling impacted by your behavior. So you can avoid all that. So what are the blind spots? When we do have a conversation, there are certain blind spots. What is it? We take it for granted. Others can think like you, or others can see like you. So we must understand everyone's perspective is very different. So let me ask a question at this point. When you woke up this morning, what was the first thing you uttered? I mean, probably I would have greeted my child. That is the first thing I uttered. So what was the first thing which you uttered when you woke up this morning? So please type it in if you can share that. What did you say as soon as you woke up this morning, and whom did you speak to? Yeah. So let us see. So we do find perspectives are different. People do not see what we see. People do not think how we think. They are different. So this is a blind spot to assume they think like us. And quite often we feel when we instill fear, we can get our job done, we can get a task done. This is a blind spot. Feelings of fear and trust and distrust change reality, right? Our schools had corporal punishment, and quite often we were punished, or people thought a child is dyslexic, so it's not meant to be along with the mainstream class. So they always instilled fear. If you do not fit in, then you're going to be excluded. So there was this threat of being excluded, or there was threat of fear. You cannot talk to the principal, you cannot approach the teacher. So there's always this fear factor, right? And then came the boss. So no, you cannot directly talk to the boss. You have to go through me. So there is a channel. The channel may be necessary for the sake of discipline, but not necessarily out of fear. So we need to check whether are we instilling fear in the people around us? Are we trying to get tasks completed through fear? So that's a blind spot. The ability to empathize. So when you are in fear, one, you cannot empathize. Two, as I mentioned somewhere in the session, conversational narcissism. So what is conversational narcissism? We say, oh, I do understand how you feel. I know the same thing happened to me. Even my dad passed away last year, so I know how it feels. So when you say that, you have given a shifting response. You shifted from the fact that this person is going through an emotional crisis because his or her parent has passed away and they're going through an emotional crisis. And you shifted the attention from them to you saying that even my parent passed away and this is what I did. So you give a shifting response. And at this point, you definitely are not able to empathize what the other person is going through. So do not give a shifting response. Don't be a conversational narcissist. We take it for granted when we go into a meeting, a review meeting or a team meeting, we remember what the other person says. So the child takes it for granted, I remember what the teacher has taught. We do not realize we need to write down, right? 70 hours for memory to dissipate. So it's very important for you to write down. You may think you remember, but the truth is you do not remember. And working memory is in the neocortex, right? So unless you repeat it, the working memory does not become stored memory. So it's very important to write it down, revise, and use as a ready reckoner to avoid this blind spot. Quite often we think it is the speaker who has to communicate properly, and it is not the role of the listener. The speaker is not communicated, and that is the issue with the gap in the communication. We do not realize the listener is also equally responsible. The listener should have asked questions. The listener should have clarified. The listener should have summarized what he or she understood. So if all this is done, then this blind spot can be avoided. So in short, what do we understand? The chemistry of a conversation. So we did talk about oxytocin. When it happens when you give a hug or the carrying effect, oxytocin is produced. We did talk about serotonin, which is there in your gastrointestinal tract. So which means the food you eat impacts a lot, serotonin. We did talk about endorphin that is produced when you exercise. We did talk about dopamine, which is produced when you complete your goals, you achieve your resolutions, then you produce dopamine. So if we activate the brain, and by drinking water regularly, we can dissolve cortisol because cortisol is dissolved in 90 seconds in water. So drink sufficient water constantly to dissolve this cortisol, which is otherwise called as stress hormone, right? So eliminate this from your body. Produce more oxytocin, create more enduring situations where you are happy, you are thrilled, you can have a pet in the house. So a pet always helps you to produce more oxytocin, or a hobby helps you to produce more oxytocin. So you can see how you can enhance this production of oxytocin. And that leads to an amazing conversation. So this is the formula for an amazing conversation, how you can activate that. So now let us go to the dashboard. We did discuss the dashboard initially, right? We are talking about Judith Glaser's dashboard, which she's mentioned in a book. So look at the color coding here. So we have the warm colors here, and then it flows into the cool colors. Like if you look at the color wheel, you have the warm colors and the cool colors. So here you feel when you say something, there is a trigger which has activated the primitive brain, right? So it is a warm. This person at this point is reacting, agitated, aggressive, angry, having an amygdala hijack. So now if you shift the focus and you make this person curious and want them to answer something, and they move to the knowledge center, which is your, we move on to the limbic brain over here, the emotional center. So you move to the limbic brain. So when you have an emotional connect and make this first person feel included, yes, you are part of the team and we do respect you and we do care for you. You make them feel included. Slowly, the rage is subsiding. So the rage subsides now, and this person moves from distrust to trust. So can you see that now it's getting cool? So then comes the knowledge center, the neocortex, and then comes the prefrontal. So as you activate these two hemispheres, what happens? You have reached the executive brain where the person is able to differentiate between what is right and wrong and mitigate risk. And at this point, the body is producing oxytocin. So we will look in detail in the next slide. What are the behaviors where cortisol is produced and the behaviors where oxytocin is produced? We will look at a different slide. But you can see as you shift the brain from the primitive to prefrontal, we're moving from I to V. That shift is taking place. So keep that in mind and note the color coding. So this is the dashboard Judith Glaser gives in her book. So this is the dashboard we are talking about. So as you can see, the word protect. So I did say the primitive brain protects you from ego and any harm to the body. So at this point, when you see the word protect, the first level of conversation, you have said something which may has put the person in 0.7 seconds understand that you are an enemy, you are a threat to them. So now the trust is very low and it becomes very a kind of a transactional conversation where you ask questions and the person responds. There is no emotional connect, there is no trust, there is no faith, and the person is always on guard because they're trying to protect, feeling threatened in terms of their ego or in terms of their safety. This is the first level. So the conversation is all about gathering information. There is nothing beyond that. It is only telling and asking more. Level 1, transactional conversation. So now you identify this person is in low trust, primitive brain. You are able to see the amygdala hijack. You know the symptoms of amygdala hijack, right? The sweating and the redness of the eyes, the fingers trembling, and your heartbeat is racing. So now you slowly transfer them by double clicking, by asking a question and moving their attention and focus to something else. So you move to level 2. So you said, okay, this is what I think, this is the decision I have taken. What do you think about it? Do you think I've taken the right decision? Do you think this will work out? Or do you feel I'm rushing into this? What would you think I should be doing? So at this point where you're advocating something which you have taken a decision on, and you're inquiring whether this person feels this is right or wrong. So you are now depositing some trust, depositing some faith in this person. So this person moves from the resistor skeptic zone to the wait and see zone, zone, where they feel, okay, this person is now trusting me. So let me see in what way I can prove that I'm worthy of this trust. So they move to this zone. So right now we're activating the limbic brain. So this is the positional conversation where you advocate your decision and you inquire whether you have taken the right decision and asking them to validate your decision. So this is level 2. So the person feels a bit comfortable right now. So now how do I activate the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex? I have to activate the experimenter mode and the co-creator mode. How do I do that? So now I ask a question for which I do not know the answer. So I say, okay, I think AI has a solution to this, or I can see digitalization will be the solution to this. What do you think about it? Do you have any experience in it? I'm not aware of it. So the moment I'm saying I'm not aware of it, do you have any experience in it? I am now in a discovery mode. I want to discover what this person has to share. So there is high trust because I do not know something and I'm expecting this person to give me that information. So here I have partnered to co-create and innovate something. I've partnered with this person. So the person has moved from protect zone to partnering zone, moved from the I to the V zone, moved from the amygdala hijack to the creative and the innovative zone. So while this shift takes place, what is constantly happening throughout the conversation? Listening is happening. Right? We talked about how listening is very important. So listening is happening. So keep that in mind. Listen to connect the limbic brain. Right? Wait and see, the conditional stress. So this listening is happening throughout. So keep this in mind. So this is the conversational intelligence dashboard where you can move from a heated argument to shift the conversation to a situation where it becomes transactional. So from making it from transactional to transformational, and here it is positional. So looking at the 3 levels. So probably this slide will help you to understand better. So we're looking at level 1, level 2, level 3, transactional conversation, positional, and transformational. So here we are informing, it is asking questions and we're getting information. And here we are negotiating, we are persuading. And at this point, we are partnered to co-create a solution. This is where we discover and explore together. At this point, the person is still wait and watch mode. At this point, the person is skeptical or in the protective mode. So this is how we can shift the conversation from level 1 to level 2 and level 3. This is what we are looking at. So we do have the changes which we already discussed. So how do we shift? So these are the behaviors which can be down-regulating and activate the primitive brain. These are the behaviors which takes to nourishing scenario where it takes you to activating the neocortex and the prefrontal cortex. So what are the behaviors? We already discussed this: excluding somebody from your team, judging them when they speak, limiting information from them, or withholding some task from them, not sharing the knowledge, and or dictating commands, or criticizing them often. So minimize conversations that trigger fear. So do not be authoritative or like a dictator. Don't use your power and authority to threaten them or instill fear in them. Don't create uncertainty. Let the KRAs or the KPIs be clear. They have a right to know what has to be shared with them, whatever information, and also they have a right to be respected. So keep that in mind. Avoid groupthink. Now, what is groupthink? If I say, okay, since I'm the person in authority, I say, okay, this is my decision, do you all agree to it? Now, obviously, me being a higher person, everybody is going to say, yes, yes, I do agree to it. Yeah, that's a perfect solution. Great, you thought about it. So this is groupthink. When nobody feels they have the ability to share their skepticism or share their thoughts, they just play along and say, yeah, you're perfectly right, because they are in fear. So how to avoid this scenario? Create an inclusive atmosphere, be more appreciative, expand the abilities or expand the tasks or expand the power of a person. Don't micromanage, share knowledge, instill an opportunity to discover, develop, and celebrate quick wins. So have conversations where there is transparency, you build relationships, understand each other, there is empathy, honesty, and care for the other person. So all this is nourishing environment, and this regulates the conversation to become uh, an active conversation which leads to a win-win solution. So what are the tips we are looking at to practice this? This is the tool you were asking about, the tools, right? The tool is very simple. It's called the LAPS technique. Listen to connect. So you do listen to the person. We had talked about this in the limbic brain, listen to connect. Then we talked about the neocortex where you ask questions. So can you see the color coding? There is nothing in red and orange, which is the primitive brain. So we are not touching the primitive brain at all. So the moment you activate the primitive brain, divert them to this. So you come to the listen mode, the ask mode, ask questions, instill trust in them. So how do you instill trust? By saying, hey, this is what I've been thinking. What do you think about it? So make them feel, hey, I think you're the best person who can handle this. Can you guide me on this? So the moment you say you're the best person who can handle this, then they feel good. Then there is trust at that point. So now sustain this and build the conversation. Take it into a conversational agility, which has a partnership where you can co-create and transform the conversation. So this is what we're looking at. The LAPS technique. L as in listen, A as in ask, P as in prime trust, and S as in sustain. So this is how we can transform the conversation if in case we have triggered it by mistake. Another tool which we can use would be the acronym trust itself. So we do move from the zone of fear to trust. So any team, as a leader, you need to instill trust in your team. So how to create trust? So let us treat this as an acronym. So when you treat it as an acronym, the T as in transparency, R as in relationship, U as in understanding, S as in shared success, T as in truth. So be truthful, make sure your biases, your cognitive biases are not impacting your relationships, not impacting the way you treat each other, not impacting your respect for each other. So make sure you remain transparent, share knowledge with everybody. Don't inform two people in the team and the others are not aware of it. So make sure you, when there is success, you share the success. It's not like, oh, I did this and that is why we managed to succeed or we managed to deliver. So it's not about I, it's about we. That is when we impact trust. Now, leaders who try to instill fear, who use their authority, who use their power, who use their influence and try to command, you do more damage by instilling fear in the team than you do by instilling trust. So definitely it is good to build trust, not fear. That is an age-old practice of getting things done by instilling fear and threatening people. That does not hold good with the millennials. So with the millennials, it's all about having faith in them, making them believe they can do it, making them feel they are respected, making them believe that you trust them to deliver, and that is when you can expect them to perform. So, having come to the conclusion of this session, we did answer a few questions. If you have more questions, we can look into that. Meanwhile, do share based on this session, what is it that you will start doing it? What is it you will keep, which means to continue, and what is it you will stop doing? If something you're doing, you will continue doing because you feel that's been right, and something which you're doing is not, it's actually hampering your sixth brain functionality, so you'll stop doing it. So what is it that you will stop? What is it you'll start? And what is it you'll, so the SKS, start, keep, and stop. Yeah. So you could answer that, type in your answers or whatever you want to share. So please do that. Meanwhile, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have Durga.
Yeah.
Before we could take up the questions, I would like to make an announcement to our subscribers and the participants. Dear subscribers and participants, kindly note we have sent you a feedback link in the chat window. Your honest feedback on our e-learning programs will keep us improve our deliveries consistently to exceed your expectations. Your input means a lot to us. Also, you will find a declaration on top of the form. Please read it and you can tell us what we can do for you. We appreciate your participation and look forward to see you in all our upcoming schedules. Thank you. Yes, we can take up the questions now.
Questions, yeah.
Yes.
Are they sharing on this?
Yes.
Response to this question as well. What will they start, keep, or stop?
Yes. Yes. We have a question. This is about that brain part. To summarize, could you please tell us what brains should we have to keep active and which one we should avoid? And please give us a quick tip to practice it.
Okay, great. That's like in a nutshell, you want to know how exactly to go about this conversational intelligence. Fantastic. So we must remember conversational intelligence is about making the invisible visible. So what is this invisible which is made visible? The trust, right? The trust on which we build our relationships. So this becomes visible when we use this intelligence. And we are also talking about how to activate the brains where we can arrive at transactional conversations or transformational conversations. So when we want a transformational conversation to arrive at a win-win solution, avoid completely the primitive brain. So primitive brain is where you go into the fight, flight, freeze, or the peace mode, right? So this you can avoid completely, and you're able to identify, right? You're able to see your red eyes, you're able to see you're angry, you're speaking in a high pitch, you're shouting at somebody, you're not saying anything which is thought of, well thought of. It is probably something which is just coming randomly to you. So in that case, immediately stop yourself from going further because you will be doing more damage if you continue with that. Drink water, start breathing, and step out for 20 minutes till you can collect and compose yourself and the neocortex is activated. So avoid which brain we need to avoid activating is the primitive brain. Now, how it gets activated is not in our control. Somebody could say something or do something which will activate it, right? Maybe your child topple some sauce on your new carpet. Now that is enough to create an amygdala hijack because you know you spent a few thousands on the carpet and suddenly there is sauce on it. So that is enough to activate your amygdala hijack. So we cannot control what activates the amygdala hijack, but we can identify the amygdala hijack and the fact that it activates the primitive brain and hijacks the neocortex, which is your thinking brain. So being aware of it, quickly do the double clicking technique and shift your thought process from the primitive brain to the neocortex. Go into the learning mode, go into the curiosity mode. That's one way you can do that, avoid primitive brain.
All right. Now we have the answers for your question, which you were asking on what do we utter the moment we get up from our bed?
Yes.
Yes. So we have the answers. I close my eyes. I keep both my palms together and I wish to see a bow-shaped curve there. I feel more positive. If not, I do it again to see the bow. Because I want my day to be positive always.
Okay, I'm not sure who has shared this, but it sounds a little like me because I tend to do that as well. So I'm quite surprised there's somebody else who does the same thing. I don't know why I do it, but even I do it. So I do that. Yeah. Yeah. It sort of makes me feel when it connects that things are going well for the day. But also, yeah, I start with a positive. Apart from that, I start with a positive reiteration, something like I'm going to rock the day, or I'm going to make the best of the day, or I'm going to make it exciting, or I'm going to make it magical, or it's going to be magical. So something, any of that positive reiteration is how I would start. So let us look at any more answers to that and responses to that.
Yes, I thank God for having blessed me with another new day in my life.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's definitely a blessing, right? To wake up alive each day now under this pandemic. Very true. So good. You all sound very positive. That's good. Any more on that?
Yes, I ping my friends in WhatsApp, greeting them to have a great day ahead.
Okay, this maybe can be tweaked. Maybe I don't know. Was possibly the digital exposure, right?
Yes,
It can become an addiction. So probably you could look at your own day and your own family at that point and see how you can take it forward. Start with the greeting with the family members and a cheerful, energetic start to the day. Uh, Later, probably the friends can come in the WhatsApp and all that stuff.
yes. So these were the answers for
But
that,
so nobody
that
starts
question.
the day with where's my coffee, where's my breakfast. So that's not the way you start your day, is it?
And no such replies.
Such
Yeah.
response. Okay, good.
And
Uh,
there is
yeah.
feedback about the session. Like the person is saying how the brain works is amazing. Thank you. So based on your presentation, they have shared this.
Good. I'm glad that you enjoyed that, and I'm sure it's going to be beneficial, right?
Yes,
You will all remember about the gut and the brain axis. So what you eat impacts your brain a lot. So keep that in mind. What you think impacts the brain a lot. So keep that in mind. So your thoughts and the food both are interconnected. So please choose your thoughts as well as your food carefully.
right. Another question.
Mm-hmm.
I understand amygdala is the root cause of all miseries. Is there a way to remove that
Can you repeat
amygdala part?
that?
I understand amygdala is the root cause of all miseries.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to remove that amygdala part of my brain through any surgical methods?
Oh my God.
Why should I live with that known devil after knowing its effect from this program? Or please let me know how can I keep it quiet? Any self-practicing methods?
Okay, that's definitely something which I've never come across. Okay, great. So when we do understand as human beings that every organ in our body has a role to play, right? Like every person we interact in our life has something to offer to us. You may meet a person just for a few hours, or some people play a role in your life for a few years, or some people for a few minutes. So any interaction you have with any human being you come across, a stranger or your support staff or your colleague or your family, they all have a lesson to teach and a role to play in your life. Similarly, any organ in your body has a role to play. So we cannot at some point say, hey, listen, I don't like you and you seem to be very troublesome. I want to eliminate you. So it doesn't work like that, because if it works like that, then we would have by now probably deleted many things from our body, I guess. Probably we don't even want to feel hungry. We don't even want to have 3 meals a day, or a lot of things we could have changed about ourselves. So we cannot remove the amygdala by any surgery just because we don't want the hijack, but definitely we can control it. It is necessary because your emotions are rooted there. So one part of the emotion is anger, but also remember the other emotions. So the amygdala also is a root foundation for other emotions as well. Your excitement, your joy. So let us say, for instance, your brainstem says, "I'm hungry. I need to survive. I'm going to die of starvation if I do not eat now." So that is your brainstem, the survival brain, which gives you that message. Now the neocortex, the thinking brain, the logical brain says, okay, I'm hungry, I need to survive, so I need to move to the kitchen, or I need to go to a restaurant which is closest to me and find food. So that is a neocortex which tells you. Then you use your app and you find the nearest restaurant, you go reach there. So once you reach there and look into the menu, the choice you make, that excitement, okay, this is my favorite dish, um, vegetable sizzler, or I'm talking about paneer butter masala, this is my favorite dish. So the excitement you have in choosing that comes from the limbic brain, which is where the amygdala is, right? So the amygdala is also the root cause of other emotions, your excitement as well. So I cannot eliminate that from my body, but recognize the changes that takes place in your body. The moment you recognize I'm having an amygdala hijack, so I tell my child I have an amygdala hijack, or by now everybody in the family knows what an amygdala hijack is. So we just isolate ourselves for the next half an hour, maybe, or just go and watch a Netflix movie, and then we come back. We say, okay, let's go for a drive, or let's go to a cafe, and then we sort it out, whatever we need to talk. So it's something which we can do at a workplace as well, right? You have the cafeterias, you have the pantry, you always can have a smoke together. So any of those places, situations, you can sort out your issues and stay away during the hijack so that you don't say anything which you will regret. And don't worry too much. Simple technique, drink water and breathe. It will be in control. Not much to worry about. Yeah.
All right. The next question.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's brain is filled with work always. Which part of his brain to be activated to make him feel he has a family and how to work on it?
I'm sure many people have this question.
Yes.
Yes. So definitely for him, the prefrontal is highly active. Okay. So you need to activate the limbic brain, the emotional brain. The emotional brain is not active. So he's always, it's about the office, it's right, it's about the work, and tends to imbalance family concerns or family relationships. And as someone said, I messaged my friends to have a great day. But do we realize that I can spend that time to give a hug to my spouse, or I spend that time to share the morning chores with my family, or I can spend that time to, as a family, go for a walk, or as a family, do some exercise and produce endorphins? Do I realize that? No, I'm sitting on the phone sending WhatsApp messages to people I do not see, people who are not in my home. I'm sending messages to them to stay happy. So why not do it with my own family? I mean, that's how we have to connect. Why don't you start with that? So probably one simple example I could do is, I could give you, which I practically follow, is I fill up the room with balloons. So I have this. I don't keep it only for balloons, only once a year during the birthday. So one room of the house is always filled with balloons. The entire floor is filled with balloons. So when we walk into that room as a family, it automatically becomes a game, right? Because we start kicking, we start throwing, and we're jumping, and then there's music playing in the background, and you start dancing. So what do you think you're doing at this point when you're jumping, dancing, and enjoying yourself as a family with those balloons around you? You are producing endorphins, one, your heartbeat is racing, it is a kind of an exercise, and you are joyful at that moment, you're laughing, right? Obviously you're not serious and angry at that moment. So you are building a relationship and you are having a family time at that point. So we need to see how within our limited resources, how we can keep ourselves happy, how we can connect with each other. We don't need gyms for this, we don't need malls for this, we don't need a situation where we can all step out and meet friends, not necessary. We can do it within our own rooms and within our own walls and still have a happy family relationship. So I guess try out a few things like this, and create zones in the house. So you create zones where this is a work zone, so he can do his laptop and his official work only as long as he's in that zone. So the moment he comes to this zone, he has to play with the kids. The moment he comes to this zone, is the food zone where everybody sits and has food. And this is the entertainment zone where we all play together a board game. And this is the zone where he helps out with the household chores. So have zones at home, that helps a lot. So it helps him to get involved in these zones within the house in the current scenario. Try this out. It works wonders.
All right. This is the answer for the last question. What will you start, keep, stop?
What will you?
Start the last slide. What will you start, keep, stop? The answer to this question in your last slide, you were asking us the question. What
Okay.
will you start,
Yeah.
keep, stop? So the answer for this: start more conscious on negative characters,
Mm-hmm.
keep positive thinking, trust, and for the
Okay.
and stop triggering primitive brain for myself and for the opposite person.
Super. Fantastic. I guess my job is done by what you shared. That is the success of the session. I would take it as the success of the session because you're able to say what was the objective of the session. Yes, you need to stop activating the brain for yourself as well as for others. So fantastic. Is there a name to it?
By Anonymous.
Okay. Great job. That was fantastic, which means you have absorbed what we shared and it did have an impact. Thanks for that. So keep it going. Uh, it will transform your life and make all your conversations successful. Quite often, if you notice, lack of conversation is what uh, causes conflicts in a team or in a family, right? Lack of conversation. So if we're able to hold on to these conversations and transform them and make it meaningful, automatically all issues and conflicts are resolved. So that is what the agenda was all about. So use the knowledge which you gained today and how to activate the six brains and how to disactivate the primitive brain, most importantly, uh, how to deactivate that. So keep that in mind.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you, Durga. The next question by Payal. This is for the previous question. What do we utter the moment we get up from bed? So
All
the
right.
answer by Payal. I always say good morning to my mother and see my mom. She'll be the first person to see before I start my day.
Super. Yes, that's a good start, definitely, Payal. And I like the fact that you start the day with a greeting. Yes, it's very important because quite often I've heard when I do counseling for couples, they say things like the husband comes and says, "Where is the newspaper?" or "Who's in the toilet?" or "Why isn't the coffee hot or piping hot?" So something like that. So they feel it is so strange when the person wakes up and the first thing that they ask is a question, right? So it's good to start the day with a greeting or on a positive note. So which brain are we triggering at this point? Can they type in the answer? Which brain are we triggering when we say something positive, we say something beautiful, or we share a compliment? Which brain are we triggering? We start the day with I love you. Which brain are we triggering?
All right. The moment I get the answers, I will read it out.
All right.
Yes. A
Okay.
compliment for the trainer by Anonymous. Very nice session, Durga. Thank you, and all the very best to the Q Genesis organizers. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We are all grateful for that feedback. This will keep us going definitely. And we are glad that we are able to impact and create that transformation, which is what the objective of Q Genesis is all about, right? How to transform lives, and they're doing a great job. And I'm glad this could impact you. And Payal, Gautami, so please do keep this in mind, Mahat. Do keep in mind deactivate the primitive brain and you can meet your resolutions, create the serotonin, create the oxytocin. So even for leadership, if you look at leadership, right, there is this book on leadership by Simon Sinek. So he talks about how to activate these hormones. So even for leadership, it's all about same conversational intelligence. So you could use it there as well.
Yes, very rightly you said about the vision of Q Genesis. Thank you, Durga. This is the answer for the last question again. Start my questioning to my teams. Keep listening. Stop. Exclude.
Oh, great. Thanks. Fantastic. Unknowingly, we exclude people. We are not racist or anything, but for some reason, we tend to exclude people, and maybe we are biased towards somebody else in the team, and we spend more time with that particular person, or invite that person home, or have more coffee or beer with this person than the other person. So, unknowing biases, cognitive biases can impact your team relationships. So, I'm glad you said you will avoid that. That's fantastic.
Yes, and that was the last Q&A for the session.
Okay.
Thank you, Durga, for patiently answering all the questions from our participants and subscribers.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity to Q Genesis and a wonderful audience. You did share all the key words, and I'm glad it had an impact. Thanks to you for participating.
Yes, thank you. An announcement to our participants and the subscribers. Please have a look at the training programs for the weekend in the displayed calendar. We have ITIL Foundation overview on Saturday, Communication Mastery on Sunday. Please note the weekend sessions are from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a lunch break of 1 hour between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. Session timings are in IST. To stay updated on our training sessions, please visit our e-learning page in our website. Thank you, Durga, for the wonderful presentation. We do hope our participants cultivate a positive environment to increase productivity, build trust, and strengthen their relationships through online or face-to-face interactions. Thank you once again. On behalf of QGenesis, we extend our hearty thanks to all our subscribers, participants, and the trainer of the session. Thank you once again, and thank you, team. See you at 7 p.m. Sorry, see you at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Good night to all of you.